This is the Book Deal Podcast,
where you will discover the inspiring stories of the authors behind your favourite books.
No matter what stage of writing you are at, we've got you covered. I'm Tina Strachan.
And I'm Madeline Cleary, and join us as we pull back the curtain of published authors.
One deal at a time.
The Book Deal Podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters which it's recorded on, and pays respect to their elders past, present and emerging.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Book Deal Podcast. I am Tina Strachan, your host for today, and I am so excited to bring you an interview with today's guest, Jane Tara. This interview is a little different to our other interviews because not only do I chat to Jane about her latest book, Tilda Is Visible, but we discuss how Jane has used manifesting and visualization to achieve her writer dreams, and it's proven successful for her beyond her wildest imaginings. Whether you believe in the power of the divine or not, every author has a goal or a vision or a desire to get what they believe is success for them. And at the root of it all, it's about understanding what you really want and taking steps to get there. And for those authors trying to get their first book deal, or published authors waiting on another contract, or perhaps something more, this episode will give you some insight on how to get there by creating a clear vision for your pathway forward. I have to say, since chatting with Jane, I've created my own vision board, and you may have heard in one of our last eps, it's already started working its magic for me. The way I see it, it certainly can't hurt to give it a go. So please enjoy this ep and let us know if you take any of these tips and tricks on board and how they work for you. Enjoy. Jane Tara, welcome to the Book Deal Podcast.
Oh, Tina, thank you for having me on. Thanks for reaching out and asking me. I was waiting for my invitation. Thank you.
Oh, no, you're most very welcome. The pleasure is all ours. It's so great to have you here. I have so many questions for you. We've got so much to chat about. And because, as you know, the Book Deal Podcast is all about helping authors on their journey to publication at whatever stage they're at. And given you've published over 100 books in your career, and you've done all of that while being a working mum and raising children, and you worked for Better Reading for a really long time as well, which is one of the most influential book communities. And your latest book, Tilda Is Visible, has been an absolute smash hit, both here in Australia and overseas. So I know that you have lots of advice for our listeners.
Well, I've certainly been around for a long time and doing. Look, I've been a working writer for a very long time, scraping a living out of it. But with all the backlist of books, I did write a series of sort of paranormal romance and YA, but when I became a single mum, I had to earn a living. So I was doing a lot of freelance writing, travel writing, parenting writing, but I wrote for the education market, both here and overseas. And I think, so many people who might be listening to this podcast or, even published authors might think that, the pinnacle of writing is to have the book deal that I have with Tilda and what's been happening, and that is true. But that backlist of children's educational books, that put food on the table for 20 years. And it's a completely different area of publishing. So you can work in multiple areas of publishing. You can work in university presses or children's sort of educational presses for primary level so there's a lot of different areas I've explored over decades.
Yeah, and it's still a line though, isn't it? It's still writing and it's still publishing, and you're still learning, I'm sure, every single time, and it all contributes. And everything, I'm a big believer that everything that all those steps that you take lead you to exactly where you are now.
Oh,
that all had to
absolutely.
happen. But that's sort of what we're going to talk about today, isn't it,
Yeah.
Jane? We're sort of, normally on the podcast, and we're often quite practical with our
Mm,
advice and our tips of, how to get published, when is the right time to submit, how to get agents, things like that.
mm.
But we are taking a little bit of a different tact with this one, and we're going to get a little bit woo-woo,
Yes.
aren't
Yeah.
we? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, manifesting, visualizing, whatever you want to call it, it's it can be a very powerful tool,
Mm,
and it can be something that is very helpful. Another helpful tool for authors
mm,
in their journey. And I know that you know quite a lot about it, and you have
mm.
some experiences that I really want to pick your brain about. But first, can we first talk a little bit about Tilda Is Visible? Your
Mm.
most recent book that has come out. I'm sure everybody's already heard of it, but for those that haven't, can you give us a one-liner or a little bit of an intro to Tilda Is Visible?
Of course. So, and it's interesting that some territories are saying this is my debut. Yeah. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um, so Tilda is Visible is comedic women's fiction. And actually in the US, they do promote it as self-help fiction as well.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that was
It has a little bit of that thread through it.
ah,
But it's about a woman in her 50s, Tilda, who wakes up one morning and her little finger is missing. And she goes to the doctor and she is diagnosed after a series of tests with invisibility, which is a common condition for women over 50. And she's told that there is no cure. She just has to accept that this is the way it is, and she is going to start disappearing. And she's given the number for a support group, and that's that. She's sent on her way. There's not much funding for research. It's a women's condition. So Tilda doesn't accept that, and she doesn't want to disappear, and she goes on the journey of a lifetime to learn how to see herself again.
that's incredible. An incredible pitch. It's I didn't know that there was a category of self-help. What
It's
did you?
not.
Oh,
I
that's just
wrote it.
yeah. No, in the
Yeah.
States, you said it was yeah,
No,
a self-help.
that's what they took it on as, because that's
Yeah.
what I told them it was.
Okay.
And they saw that. I think that things are really changing. So I was on the journey that Tilda takes. And when you're on that journey of healing, self-development, looking at yourself and meditating, which Tilda does, I really wanted to, when sort of wasn't doing that work on myself and wasn't reading the many fantastic self-help authors that are out there in the non-fiction space, I wanted to immerse myself in entertainment that still was aligned with that journey. So I really wanted to watch a movie about a woman who was on a journey like this, or I wanted to read a book that was really aligned with where I was at, and I couldn't find anything specifically like this. So I wrote it, and it turns out that there's a lot of people who are really on this journey of self-help, self-development, neuroplasticity, because there's a merging of science and metaphysics now. More and more people are turning to this to sort of shift their perception about themselves and the world, and to heal things. And so I think we're going to be seeing more entertainment that is aligned with that as well. More entertainment that's uplifting and that talks about this story of healing and human consciousness.
Mm. Well, books do help.
Diving right in there. Yeah.
Well, books do help people,
Mm,
don't they? On many
yes.
different levels. And like you were saying, that you wrote that book though because you couldn't find anything about that
Mm,
particular. You couldn't find a book that filled that particular gap for you, and you wouldn't have been the only one. Surely,
mm,
clearly, there has been many people that have been searching that for that as well, because the book's been so successful. And that's always been, common advice that you hear is if write the book that you want to read.
Yes.
And that's exactly what you've
And
done
that is
there.
really important because you spend a lot of time, often years, with
Mm,
those characters in that situation. So, what do you enjoy? How can you be lifted out of your own life into a world, even if you're writing horror or thriller? If you're enjoying that space, then it's a really great energy to put out into the world. But ultimately, over the top of that self-help thread, I really wanted it to be entertaining. I just wanted people to so anyone who's listening who hasn't read Tilda and might be put off by the self-help, it's comedic women's fiction. And I think that the best way to sort of share some of these tools with people is to not preach. There's enough great teachers out there, and just to introduce a few ideas. They can take them up or not. They can just sort of, be invested in the love story that's in the book rather than anything else.
Yeah, it's a story for many people, regardless
Mm,
of, people in Tilda's situation.
mm,
But I was going to ask you about the inspiration for your book, and you said that you felt like you were going through that journey at the
mm.
same time when you were writing it. So you've really.
Yes, I actually went through the journey before writing it. I went through the breakup of the marriage, like Tilda. I had been meditating for quite a few years. Like Tilda starts there. I had to face childhood trauma like Tilda does. So I'd gone through that and arrived at a place where we were all locked down. And like a lot of people, I had the extra time to go, okay, well, I think it's time I wrote that book that I've been thinking about for so long. And I did. Tilda had been with me for about 10 years by
Had
that
it, yeah.
stage. Yeah.
Yeah, even everything up and so, because I find it fascinating that she is literally disappearing and becoming invisible. Like,
Mhm.
because there's so, people use that term for just, just not being noticed, anymore, which is what you're trying to capture. But actually, physically, her body disappearing is gold. I love that you've actually just physically put that on there. And so was that concept always with you, or did that come a little bit later when you were trying to?
No, that was always with me. So and you've probably heard this story on podcasts. I roll it out a bit, but I was misdiagnosed with a degenerative eye condition and told that I was going blind. I didn't get the results of what it actually was for nearly 3 months. So for 3 months, I lived with the possibility of losing sight. And that was an interesting 3 months because I at first freaked out. But then I went down this rabbit hole of research into some really unusual studies that were taking place on the mind's eye and teaching blind people to see through their chest and all these really, really interesting rabbit holes that I went down. But then I started to really question, well, how do I see? How do I see the world? And each one of us sees the world differently. We all have a different version of reality, which is fascinating to me. And I could like talk about that with wine for
Yeah.
hours. Um, so how did I see it? And there is a quote that's attributed to Einstein about how each of us has to decide whether we see the universe as friendly or not. And that's a question I started to ask myself, and the answer to that was really uncomfortable. I realized that I saw the world, the universe, my life as something of high risk. It was sort of there was always a sense of doom around me. Like I couldn't be happy because it was always going to be taken away from me. And so as a result, I sabotaged a lot of things that could have led to happiness in my life. And anyone who does any form of self-help knows that all roads lead back to self-worth, and mine led back to my childhood as well. So I had to go back in my healing process and start from there and start to really value myself, and learn how to see myself. Who was I? And who was I without all of my the baggage that I'd been carrying around for, 40 odd years.
Mm.
And so that was the journey that I went on. And during this time, Tilda came to me and she wasn't quite, but she was always going to be invisible, because I realized that through potentially losing my sight, I would somehow become invisible to myself. But then I realized I already was.
Mm. Wow. And again, like we've already touched on that, like everything that you've done beforehand leads to where you are now, and including having an incredibly scary diagnosis of possibly losing your eyesight, but which would have been horrific to go through, and I'm sure traumatic, and even probably still dealing with the trauma of that, even though it turned out to be incorrect.
Well, I got a book out of it, so I'm fine.
That's what I mean. I know. See, had you not have had to be misdiagnosed.
I've got to say, for a few months after I received the correct diagnosis, I woke each day and readjusted. It was like that fear that I was carrying in my arms. Actually, I could feel it in my arms still, and then I'd go, "Oh no, that's gone. I can let that go. I can let that go." So, it was big,
Yeah.
stressful, but at the same time, a lot of our stressful times, traumatic times, those are the our wounds. They're actually the doorway into something else if we face them as well. They are the doorway into growth.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, it is clearly has been a relatable story in the end, that, that came out of that whole diagnosis, because it's gone so well. The book has been amazing. And did I see that it was recently on Oprah's daily list? Oh my God, is that what it's called? Oprah's daily
Oprah
best.
Daily.
Yeah, that's
like best books of
incredible.
spring or something. That was crazy. Yeah.
It's doing so well overseas. There's lots of attention. I think deservedly. It sounds like it's still going really strong, and they
There are
could
some
watch this
really
space.
amazing things happening with it. And I guess at the foundation of this conversation, it's that, like, how can these things happen to a book? And they do happen to some books, I know, but I know my personal experience of how I feel like I've set this book up,
Mm.
whereas 30 years of writing
Mm.
previously haven't sort of led me to the same place.
Yeah. But it would have been beneficial and would have helped in some way. And then, you came across that idea of Tilda, and then it's all just come together. And because you did go through that experience that you went through, then you clearly writing with, with a lot of truth there, I
Yes.
guess, which makes the difference between someone else who could write a similar book but just hasn't experienced it for themselves. So,
I think, and I can't remember who it is. It's an Australian, maybe it's Michael Robotham. But anyway, someone has a sign on their wall, and I think a few Aussie authors have taken this, and it says "Make them care." And so I often think about that when I'm writing, and when I was writing Tilda, I'd never considered that before. I guess writing was sort of either, for me, I just wrote for myself, or to pay bills.
yeah.
Right? So when I was writing Tilda, I'd almost finished the first draft, and something was missing. Really, something just. And I know most writers, they have in different ways, they'll have a sense of something's not working. And so for me, it's kind of in my diaphragm. I kind of get this sort of, it's like a sense. I knew something wasn't working, and I thought about this sign, "Make them care," and I kept thinking, why is anyone going to care about this? So I decided I needed to put more of myself into it. And that was a massive leap for me. I realized that I wrote at a distance. And so I put myself into it. I put the end of my marriage into it. And not all of it. Like Tilda's not me, but it's certainly inspired by a lot of my life and sort of auto fiction in a way, or lightly so. Uh, but I did put in with Pearl the inner dialogue character in Tilda. I put a lot of my own personal programs and thoughts that I have throughout the day. And when I finished the book, I then felt very, very vulnerable. And I put it away for about 6 months and didn't show anyone because I worked at Better Reading, because I worked in with all the publishers, I thought they're all going to think I'm absolutely crazy. Eventually, I showed someone in the industry, and I knew that this person meditated, so it wouldn't be too much of a leap. She loved it, suggested someone else. Then a good friend of mine, Belinda Alexandra, the historical author, she also meditates. She suggested Kelly at a firm, and I'd always sort of dreamt of being published by a firm because I think they're an amazing publisher, but I didn't know Kelly Doust personally. And so I contacted her, and it all happened quite quickly after that. And what I've discovered by putting myself into it in that way and allowing myself to be that vulnerable is actually the story's not that unusual. It's like so many women.
Yeah. And that would have been a very hard thing to do then, to write, to put yourself into it. And
It was
how
like
did you?
therapy.
It was. So it was
Yeah.
hard, but it was
Yes.
beneficial.
Yeah. It's interesting that when I was going through the editing process, even the edit in the US, there was still a couple of scenes with Tilda and her ex-husband that I still found a little difficult to work. Yeah. So I don't, and I have so many women say to me, my marriage was like that. Not overtly abusive, but I felt undermined like that. I was in pain like that. So yeah, it worked.
It did work, and it's made it what it is today. And like we were saying, you can't fake that. Lots of people can probably write about those sort of circumstances, do a bit of research, but I'm sure they don't communicate it on the page or connect with the reader as much as someone like yourself who's been through it, because you can describe more of what it feels like personally and on the inside. So yeah, although it's hard, it's like you said, it's been therapy, and it's really paid off, hasn't it, by producing this like really book that people have been able to connect to. So congratulations, well done, Jane.
Thank you.
So Jane, we know each other. We met through the 2024 debut crew.
Yes.
Even though my book ended up coming out 2025, but that's been cool because I got to be part of the two of the debut crews.
Yeah.
But recently you reached out because of something that I posted on Instagram, where about 2 years ago, my kids brought home the Scholastic Book Club brochure. And I remember just, looking through it, because I love it when they bring it home. Because they were around when I was at school, and I used to love getting the book club brochure and going through and circling everything, and
oh yes, circling everything,
circling all the things that you want, and ticking the ones that you've read. And my parents never ordered me anything for the Scholastic Book Club thing, unfortunately, but I remember always just circling them and loving them, and I love books and love reading. And so when my kids would bring them home, that was incredible. And a couple of years ago, I was just sort of mucking around, and I just drew like this in it, and I just filmed myself drawing in it, and I wrote like my book on the drew a little book in there, and I wrote my book, and I was just like, just wishing. I don't know, I popped it up. I can't even remember what my caption was. And then a couple of months ago, my youngest came home, and he's like, with the Scholastic Book Club brochure. I'm like, cool, book club. And he's like, Mum, look. And he opens it up, and my book's in it.
How magic.
It's just so many things about that was so incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, just having my debut book in the book
Yeah.
club, which I didn't know about, so it was just like it was a surprise, and then but to have my kids be like,
Oh,
you know,
so cool.
mum,
Yeah.
I know, it's like
Yeah.
it's so incredible. It's like, oh, all my friends were there, they're all circling it, so they were their
Yeah.
parents. I was like, oh no, it was so just one of those moments. Like you could not, yeah, nothing can beat that. That was so great. And so then I did a little post of like that post from 2 years ago where I was drawing my book in the Scholastic Book Club brochure to actually now where it's in the
Mm.
book in the Scholastic
Yeah.
Book Club brochure. Just yeah, being like, call it what you will, but you know, manifesting,
Mhm.
visualizing, whatever it is,
Mm.
but it's putting it out there and putting it
Yes.
out into the universe,
Yes. Yeah.
and yeah, hopefully it comes back at at you in some way. So,
Mm.
and this is something you have actually actively
Yes.
manifested, haven't you? And this is something that I really want to chat to you about today. So,
Yeah.
can you tell us what manifesting looks like for you, and what you
Mm.
did, and sort of what's come out of that for you?
Mm. So manifesting gets a bad rap.
Mm,
Because people think that it is in some way just like believing in magic. You know,
mm,
um, I did a podcast a few years ago, and I was already someone who was actively manifesting the journey that I'm on now. But I did a podcast a couple of years ago with Tara Swart, and she is an English neuroscientist. She was a psychiatrist with the NHS for over a decade before she went back and studied neurobiology or something. She teaches neuroscience at MIT. Like she is, her credentials are
yeah.
just.
Mhm.
I felt like I just sat there going, "Oh, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy to be speaking to you." She wrote a book called The Source, and that is a book about manifesting, but she only uses the brain, even though she believes in kind of a sort of an expanded sort of
Mhm.
reality. She only explained how manifesting works with the brain and how using things like vision boards and meditations and visualizing can help you manifest things. So one of the things that she talks about in that is value tagging. Now, by manifesting, by being very, very clear about what you want, the brain starts to value tag that information because it does that all day long anyway. That is what the brain does. So if your brain is just left to its own devices, it's going to value tag based on the traumas of your past and who hurt you and who said this 3 weeks ago and it will value tag information, just kind of throw it all back to you. It's a bit chaotic. If you become quite strategic about your career and start to really have a vision of how you would like that to look, um, and then kind of let it go. Like you don't need to micromanage everyone's job with this either, but you do it at your end
Mhm.
and allow the space for that to happen. Generally, things will come in like your brain value tags opportunities to get you to that experience.
Mhm.
So for you, you looked at that catalog and you went, oh, and you also said, I was in a dreamy state.
Mm.
Bit of a
Yeah.
dreamy
Yeah.
state. You take those brain waves down. You don't do it in a hyped up beta brainwave state. You take it down into a slower, dreamier, creative state. And you're doing that and you're thinking, this is what I would like. Then you got to work on it.
Mm.
You didn't just wait for it to show up, you got to work on it.
Mhm.
And then what I love about this is because it's kind of like you're building the experience and then the divine surprises you.
Mhm.
You didn't even realize it was going to be in there. It was a surprise.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in
That's
the
right.
most magical ways.
Yeah.
So it is a lesson in trust
Mhm.
as well. That if you start to train the brain you train the brain in what you want, then the external world kind of falls into place because you've designed that and it is built. And so that's the way that it happened for you. So with me, for Tilda, I have, like most writers, like most creative people, been at the mercy of others for my entire career.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And I mean, just a really great example of that is, you know, at the beginning of your career, so many people, they don't have the money to pay you, but it'll be good exposure.
Mm.
Yeah, it only
Yeah.
happens. Plumbers don't need exposure. They get paid.
Yes.
But creative people are, and
Mm.
we're all so grateful for the exposure
Mm.
that we take it. What are we saying to ourselves
Yeah.
about that? So a lot of the work that I did was really on self-worth,
Mm-hmm.
being paid for my work.
Mm.
I built that as a really solid foundation. And then I started to think about, and I wrote something I loved myself. It wasn't like I wasn't writing for market or anything like that. It was what I put my heart and soul into this book. And then I went, okay, let's be strategic about it. So there's two ways to be strategic, I believe. There is, and you merge both of them. So I'm very strategic about my career, very strategic. And I come from a marketing background and I do whatever it takes. I was out there meeting booksellers and doing all of those things that really help a book. But then on the other side, I was also creating some vision boards and meditating and being really specific about some of the experiences I would like for Tilda. And once I was clear on that, I let them go.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, like you did with you didn't think about
Mm.
that again. It just sort of showed up in your life. So I let them go. And those vision boards that I created, like I can look back at them now and go, oh my God, so many. And some of the things I was like, oh, I'll just put that on because you never know, or, you know, pop that on, you never know.
Yeah.
There's magic in the world.
And
We
what
can't
does
explain it, but there is.
My name is Angela Tonioli, and I'm the author of the picture book Mavis, the Little Plane Spotter, published in 2025 by Wombat Books and beautifully illustrated by Shannon Melville. Darwin is bombed and volunteers are needed on the home front, but what can a 10-year-old girl do? Mavis is frustrated when she's told she's too young to help the war effort, but when she discovers she can volunteer alongside her older sister, she becomes a plane spotter. The girls keep an eye out for enemy aircraft every Saturday from their observation point in the town's clock tower. One day when her sister is home sick, Mavis spots an enemy bomber flying overhead. Does she have what it takes to save the town? Mavis, the Little Plane Spotter, was inspired by an interview with a 90-year-old woman about her experiences as a child plane spotter in rural New South Wales during World War II. I'd never heard of plane spotters, so I jumped online and discovered everything I could. My research led me to a story about Australia's youngest World War II plane spotter, and that's when I knew I'd found the perfect character for a picture book. Not only does the book honour the child plane spotters of World War II, but it also allows me to pay tribute to my grandmother Mavis, who was, from all accounts, one feisty kid. Mavis, the Little Plane Spotter, takes a non-confrontational look at wartime issues. There are many wonderful picture books that help children extend their understanding of different aspects of war and people's experiences both at home and on the war front. Mavis, the Little Plane Spotter, celebrates children's potential to be hometown heroes and invites readers to experience a pivotal moment in Australia's history. I hope you enjoy reading it as much as I enjoyed writing it.
Yeah, there's so much there. And I think so, but on a practical level, what does the vision board look for you? Is it an actual tangible thing? I know people that use like Canva, like photos
I
and
use
stuff.
Canva.
You use Canva, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because I tend to make, like, I know I spoke to someone yesterday actually, who's a very successful woman, and she does a vision board every New Year's Eve. And she pastes it all on a big board and she puts it up and she has that in her office. And that's once a year. For me, I do it sort of for different things. I might do like 6 or 7 vision boards a year. One example is last October, I was going to the US because Tilda had made a most anticipated list for someone who was throwing a party to launch the list.
Wow.
I thought, yeah, great, I'll go for that. As it happened, I also had some personal stuff going on at that time with someone who was terminally ill. And I thought, and I started to get very anxious about this trip, and fear gets in the way of everything in life. So I created a vision board to ground myself. It was almost like if I could put on the vision board a series of things that I knew this was going to happen, it just settled my anxiety about the trip. So, for example, on the vision board, I had that I was flying business class. I didn't buy a business class ticket, but I was flying business class. I was enjoying myself at a party. There was a vision of a great meeting in New York with I had Penguin Random House, the actual New York office there. And so I went to lunch there, and then I had LA and I had some meetings there. So all of this was on the vision board. And by the time I'd finished creating the vision board, I thought, I feel much better about the trip. I feel like there it is. This is okay. This is going to be okay. I just kind of settled myself with the creative process of it. Anyway, I flew business class. I had these great meetings. I went to this party. I did all of this. I had a wonderful time. But here's the really funny thing. I went in LA. I was going to do 2 days of research for the novel I'm currently writing. Now, on every vision board, I put a unicorn as well. And that is a symbol for what I can't even imagine. So everything that I imagine, this is all stuff I can imagine. And that's great. But there's something I can't even imagine.
So you're not limiting yourself. Your unicorn is the
thing that
sky.
At this particular point in my life, I don't even know that could happen.
Yeah.
Something amazing. Anyway, so I put the unicorn on and whatever. And I'm having this trip, and I really felt like I was in flow and trust. And honestly, the experience of being there for my book was just, I was in gratitude as well. Like, I really was so grateful for these experiences and meeting these wonderful people. And anyway, one day I'm walking around West Hollywood, doing a little bit of research, going to a particular place to look at a bookstore that I'm putting in my novel. But this bookstore closed down many, many years ago, but it was famous in the 1970s. So I just wanted to see the location. And I walked down the street that, I knew it was at the end of the street, and I turned left to look at where this bookstore used to be, and it's this massive glass window with 2 6-foot unicorns in the window. And I'm standing there, I'm laughing, I'm crying, I'm like, in the joy and the magic of life. And it was a great trip. But I'd used that particular vision board just to kind of feel better about the trip. I felt like I was a little out of my comfort zone. It grounded everything. And then I allowed for a little bit of magic at the end of it. So so that's I use vision boards for all sorts of things.
Yeah, that's an incredible story about the unicorn. I really love that. I hadn't heard of that before or thought of that before, about you like using a vision board, or however people would like to visualize or manifest for, I guess, calming maybe your internal feelings. And that's such a great idea for things that because I can see how that would work in for many things about having anxiety or maybe not knowing if it's exactly the right thing to do, because do you think even it's just allowing you that time to sit with the discomfort and the allow you that time to run through in your mind what is actually worrying you the most about this,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then how would you like it to be, and how would you like it to work out? And then once you have gone through everything that you think could be the like the concern, I guess that's step one of even realizing sometimes that it's not as big as maybe you thought it was, but then you have that those options then for making it better, or just understanding what could happen to make it better. And then it's just because you've already run through all the consequences and the negatives in your mind, and but you've then worked that next step to allow for the positives. That was my really long awkward way of
Yes,
basically
yes,
saying, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I also think that creative people, authors, we're just so grateful for anything. That's why we
Yeah.
start our career with exposure, and then we get to the point where we're being published and we'll take anyone. And we just sort of we're constantly in survival mode, I guess. So doing something like this is a creative process where we can just kind of step back from it a little bit and go, okay, well, yeah, maybe I have a few opportunities here, but what do I want?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So,
Me.
yeah, do you still, take those opportunities if they do come along, or do you go back and revisit your vision board and think, oh, it doesn't align with what that vision is, so maybe I just need to place that opportunity to the side for the moment, and
Yes.
because it's not right for me right now?
I think that would be a very, very hard thing for any author to do.
Oh, yes.
To say no to an opportunity. Certainly, once there's a level of success, they might, but I think in the early days. But I think going back to the value tagging in the brain, by doing this as you're starting off, you become very clear about what you want, and perhaps those opportunities tend to come up more anyway, the ones that are really worthy of you and the right ones for you. So when I had Tilda ready to take out, like I could have taken that to a few people at different publishers, and honestly, this country has incredible publishers. Like you write wherever you go.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's a better publisher for your particular story. It's not that they're a better publisher, it's just for your story. So I was through this I just knew that a firm was the right one for Tilda. And I didn't know that Kelly Doust worked at a firm. I'd never met her before. And it turned out that she publishes self-help and women's fiction. So that kind of came together really beautifully for me, because I thought, well, I'd love to be with a firm, but I don't know whether they're the right publisher for me. And then it turned out that Kelly had gone and started working there a year before. And I'd
You
never
would never have, you couldn't have planned that if you, even
so
if you tried.
so I think if you start to really work out what is right for you and your story and your career in the long term. And this is a beautiful way of being creative and helping with that. And I not only do vision boards, I put it into meditations. I do all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But I think the vision board is a really it's a creative act, and it's a really good way for people to start to go, what do I want? And if you're doing it on Canva, you've got all these images there that you might, and you put one image on your vision board, and because you've only got a certain amount of space, you might go, yeah, I actually don't care about that. That's not something that interests me. And you take it off and you look for the things that do. Your brain takes a visual of that when you're finished. And it's a great thing when you wake up in the morning and go to bed at night. Just look at your vision board.
Yeah.
and your brain takes a snapshot of that vision board because you've taken the time to place on it what is really important to you, and then it begins to really look for those opportunities. Those opportunities are already there for all the opportunities that I've had are there for you and anyone who is listening, but but often we don't see them. We don't think we're worthy of them, and we don't see them because we're too used to looking for the chaos.
And I love what you said about, there's two big things to this, isn't there? There's like you were saying, you're manifesting, you're creating your vision boards and using that to come up with your ideas of where you want to go. But then there's the strategic. You can't just create that vision board and then sit back, do nothing. You can't be like, I want to be on Oprah's daily best books of spring or whatever that title was, and then just pop that on your vision board and not write the book.
No. Or get out and promote the book.
That's right. Yeah. And then writing it's only just one part of it. You're right. And then you need to do all the steps that take you in that direction. So in a way, even, if people are uncomfortable with the woo-woo or the manifesting or the visualization, you're actually, you can think of it as writing yourself a to-do list almost in a way, but in a creative way. It's the to-do list. It's my goals, my list of where I want to be, and how do I get there? What are the steps that I need to take? And when, what do I do tomorrow that's going to take me in that space, or what's going to take me away from it? And it's just about helping to direct you.
Yes.
Towards your goal.
And you can do that with a list. You could, a lot of people write their goals out for the year or their 5-year plan, or a vision board is just a visual way of doing that, really.
Yeah, which is probably, like you were saying, because it's visual and the way that our brains work as humans, it's a very good way to sort of embed that. And the value tagging you were saying, definitely it's helpful for the visions. I remember watching a documentary or a show many years ago about the Spice Girls. I think it was about the Spice Girls, but it was Jerry Halliwell, from the Spice Girls, and she showed this. She went back to her childhood home and she showed this photo frame that she had still in her bedroom, and she opened it up because on the back of the photo that she had on there, she had written something like, I can't remember the exact words, but it was something in line with being successful in her singing and traveling the world and earning enough money being a singer, and I don't know if she used the words famous or whatever, but it was 100%. This is where I want to be. And she just wrote that. This was before Spice Girls happened, when she was younger, and she just popped it there, and she just said, I just used to always think about that. So that was her way. Canva didn't exist then, so that was her way of popping that there as her goal, I guess.
Yeah, so I think there's a very famous story about Jim Carrey. And he was broke and, at the point where, like, no work. And he wrote himself a $10 million check, and he pasted it to the ceiling of his dingy flat. And he'd wake up every morning and see that $10 million check. And I think it was within 2 years, he got a $10 million payout for whatever film it was. So, yes, I mean, for me, and I think all of those are they work for some people, but for me, when I'm thinking in advance, I guess, or of success, or that Tilda has done very well, what I actually think about, and I do it in my meditation, at the end of my meditation, I will really, really visualize this. And it's getting up in the morning and walking out, and I can feel the floor on my feet. And I walk out and I make myself a really great coffee. I go and sit out on my front porch, my little lovely bushy view, and actually I've added a water view to it, but that'll be there. But and that I'm spending my day, I have a few meetings and then I spend my day writing, and I'm very, very clear about that. And and when I started doing that, I was writing and working full time and doing some freelance stuff. I'm a single mum. I'm doing, so that's the vision of success for me, to actually be in a space where I can do what I love and afford to do what I love every day. And the things that have led to me being able to just get up and have that morning coffee and go and sit at my computer and write all day in my vision, the things that have led to that are pretty amazing and magical, but I leave that up to the divine.
I like that. I like that because, like you said, it could be, there could be some unicorns in there that you don't even know about that are leading you to that day. I really like that. That's great. Visualizing how you want your day to be and everything else.
It's a very good exercise for a writer to write your perfect day.
Yeah.
And I've done that a couple of times, and it always sort of looks like that. It's like staying, tracksuit pants and my dog, and
it sounds amazing. It sounds incredible.
It's not, your perfect day is not that day that you're out there at a book launch or anything, but it's the normal day that you would live on a regular basis. That brings you contentment.
Yeah, I think that's probably all that a lot of writers want. Just pay me some money so I can stay home and write and just be comfortable doing that. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
That's a very good vision to have. But you meditate, like you were saying, Jane, and how is that also, like you were just saying, you meditate on it. So you found that to be really useful to almost as another tool to cement that visualization?
Yes, look, there's so much to that, because meditation has completely and utterly changed my life. And really, vision boards is, I don't need to ever do another vision board. It's the meditation that has changed my life. But I love to do all of these things, and weave them into my week. But the meditation for me has done a couple of things. Firstly, as the journey that Tilda goes on, it gave me the space to observe my inner programs, and those inner programs that were getting in the way of me being content, being happy, getting what I deserve, what anyone deserves. So when you meditate, there's a space between an event and your reaction, and in that space you can recreate your life. So I can now, on a day where I'm tired, for example, and I've got my old internal programs coming up, I just don't react to things anymore. I give nothing the power. I don't disempower myself by listening to that and getting worked up about it and believing it. I just kind of, non-attachment. I just practice non-attachment with it. That is where my life started to really change, by changing the internal programs in my brain. But then once I became a more experienced meditator and was able to access a sort of space, I started to, at the end of my meditations, I can really visualize how I want my life to look, or how I want an experience to look. And I say experience, I'm not comfortable with public speaking. I never have been. It's always something that has really, and in fact, I've self-sabotaged so I wouldn't have to speak publicly a lot. But I'm quite comfortable with it now. I've had I've just been out there talking about Tilda a lot for the last year and a half. But what I do is I will meditate beforehand. And in the last bit of the meditation, I always I can see the audience that I'm speaking to. I just really sort of sit in my heart and think, okay, how can I connect with them? And I imagine very, very clearly just having a really lovely event. Then I let it go. And I walk in there way more comfortable and less anxious because I've actually already experienced it.
I know what you mean with that. Yeah. I do a little bit of a thing where I actually try to think of all the bad things that could possibly happen first. I know that sounds weird, but I get there in the end because I think to myself, well, what could happen? And like, for example, with public speaking, like you've said, like I used to have to do it a lot for work. I still have to do it now in a more kind of stressful situation for work. But I think the thing that used to always, I realize now, the thing that used to kind of scare me about it and make me so nervous about it was looking nervous. Like I didn't want people to
Yes,
know that I was nervous, which is such a weird thing. And
yes,
now I just say to myself, because I feel like I've done it so often, it's like, okay, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? Like maybe your voice will shake a little bit, but you know that that only just happens at the beginning, or you forget your words. You know what? No one actually really minds. Just look at your sheet. Or I just try and think of what could really go wrong, and then but
yes.
really what does that matter, and what will you do if it does happen, and in the end, like you kind of just think to yourself, well, it's not that bad anyway. And so by the time I get to that point of walking out there, like you said, I feel like I've already lived it and I've
You're
experienced.
not actually thinking of the negatives there. You're actually being your own cheerleader. Those negatives are already there,
Yeah.
programs, but you've got a really positive program going, but that doesn't matter. That's not right, but that's not correct. You'll be
Yeah.
fine. I've done this before and it's going to be okay. Get
Yeah.
out there now.
Yeah, I do that now. That's not what I used to do though, but
All
I wish I
right.
knew that, as we wish we knew,
Yes.
but that's how you get to
Yeah.
this point. Another celebrity story, I remember Seinfeld. Everyone knows Seinfeld, and they were around for quite a while, weren't they? Many, many years. And I saw another interview with him, a few years ago, and he was saying he didn't meditate when he was filming Seinfeld, but he does now.
Yes.
And he said he thought if he had known about meditation and the benefits of meditation whilst they were filming Seinfeld, that the show would have gone on for a lot longer than it did. But he just was sort of worn out, creative fatigue as well. So he found it extremely helpful with that. So yeah, that I found that like a really interesting story, that such a big, prolific, well-known, institution as Seinfeld,
Yes.
and just saying he really thinks that, the importance of meditation, that it could have still gone on had he known about it. It would have just.
I think meditation just has so many benefits. And, I've written a book about it, basically. It's
Yeah.
and some people don't like that because they don't want to meditate. They never will. And that's fine. That's fine. But if I can introduce it to a few more people, because it really does help physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It has a ripple effect in your community, in your family. The benefits, the neurobiological benefits of regular meditation, it really literally changes your brain.
It's a science, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm.
And it's not just sitting. You don't have to just be sitting in one spot.
No.
Making, humming noises to yourself, like
No,
some people
actually,
think
the
you do.
meditation style that I've settled on, because I've tried that. I've tried the humming noises, and I've tried the sitting in uncomfortable lotus-like positions and not being able to walk for an hour when you get up, and all of those things. I've done this 10-day silent retreat, and I wrote about that in Tilda, and that was a version of hell, very beneficial, but really tough. But I've settled on a style that's really fun. It's really, really fun, and it is guided. And there are a lot of different meditations to choose from. So if I had to sit, I used to sit every day and do the same one, the same style for a long time, and it was a drag for me. I like to shake things up a bit. I did it because it was beneficial. But I used to make so many excuses before sitting down and doing it. Whereas now, like I'll meditate twice if I've got time. It's
Wow.
fun. But there are also walking meditations. in this style. And in most traditions, there are walking meditations. So for people who want to, put the headphones on and be at a beautiful park or a beach and do the walking meditation, it's just as beneficial as sitting.
That's good. That's really
Yeah.
interesting to know, because I would love to do that. And, so my thing is I don't meditate, Jane, but I know that I should, and I know that I need to, and occasionally I do, and I have done it in times of, when I've known that, I don't know what else is going to give, something has to happen. And so I have the Headspace app on my phone, and that's really good for I've had it for years, and sometimes I don't touch it for a year. Then sometimes they'll have like a really quick meditation, or they have them for everything, or even I've got yoga and music and everything now on there. It is a really good app to have. And so I've put that out occasionally, but my thing is, I say I don't have the time. And I know I've heard you say a bit of a what's that saying?
Well, if you're everyone should meditate for an hour a day, unless you're really busy, and then you should meditate for 2.
Yeah.
It's a Zen saying. It's actually very true. And look, it's human condition. I do it myself. I'm really busy. I don't have time to meditate. But if I meditate, if I take that time out, I get way more done.
Yeah. So it evens itself out in the end.
Yes.
More so probably. But like you were saying, there's walking. Can you do it while you're doing your yoga?
I think that's mindfulness practice.
More mindfulness,
yeah. And I think the more you meditate, the more mindful you are in a lot of your practices, but they are two separate things. So people will say to me, I meditate when I'm swimming. And it's not meditation.
Not quite.
It can be a mindful practice,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not meditation.
I see, yes. Which mindfulness is still beneficial if you have to do anything.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So, Jane, for the listeners who've listened today and think, I'm going to, visualize, and I'd love to learn more about meditation, do you have any suggestions for how people can find a little bit more information about this? Because I feel like there's 1,000 podcasts and apps and things for these
There are,
days.
and I think with something like meditation, people find their own way into it. There are so many different practices out there and different styles. So I would say find what resonates with you. Even just go onto YouTube and do 10-minute meditation and bring up something, and you like the music or you like the voice of a person, and just start there. With visualization and vision boarding, I'm actually on Substack. I'm going to do a short course, just a 3-day course on it, because a few people have talked to me about it, and because I've started talking, I've come out of the broom closet, started talking about it publicly. But and I'm calling it chair flying, because I've gone down the rabbit hole of watching the Blue Angels. It's an elite team of pilots in the US Navy, pilots who fly. They do air shows and stuff, but one mistake and everyone would die. They fly within 19 inches of each other in these fighter jets, and but if you go on to YouTube, Instagram, whatever, and look them up, you can see in their training that they sit together as a team and they visualize the trip first. They visualize the whole thing first. Now, I'm dating a Qantas captain. Qantas gets them to visualize as well. They do chair flying as well. Elite athletes do it. Surgeons do it.
Yes.
There are a lot of highly successful people who visualize an event, an experience, before it actually happens. And so that's, I'm going to do a 3-dayer on that, because it's the research is there. It works with the brain. The brain actually does not know, literally does not know, if an experience is actually happening if you're imagining it at that level.
Wow.
So it thinks that it's actually happening. So you train the brain, and then the experience has already happened in your life.
That's incredible. So you will advertise this for your Substack?
Yeah, so on Substack,
Great.
people can come on. I often do 10 minutes a day meditation challenges and little things like that on Substack. I'm more woo on Substack.
Yeah, I love that. It's your
I
little
do my woo.
woo platform.
Yeah.
Oh, Jane, that's all been incredible. Can we give our listeners some homework? Can we get them to go away and have a look at your Substack anyway, for all the woo, and create a little bit of a vision board or a list or however.
Create a vision board, or even sit down, and particularly authors, sit and write. Have it just take a few moments and then write your perfect day, your ideal day. You know, write a page or two on it, see what comes out. You might surprise yourself actually at what that entails as well. Not the big, you're at the premiere
in your mansion with your 17 bedrooms, and just
taste the coffee, feel the floor, see where are you sitting, what are you, how are you enjoying, how are you savoring your life, because you're not in that survival mode. Write your perfect day, see what that is, and honestly reach out like to both of us and let's see people, what the
come up with
like for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, definitely. We want to know about that. And then I guess, but then also maybe take one step in that direction.
Once you know what you want, start to actively go towards that. It's like it's like archery. You've got to see the bullseye. You've got to work it all out. You've got to do the training. You got to, and then you let that arrow go towards but you don't just, shoot anywhere. You've got to work out what that bullseye looks like for you. And then you start to go in that direction.
I love that. And then in May 2026, we will regather and we will want to hear everybody who's gone away and visualize. We'll get you on the show and you can tell us how that's gone for you. We want to hear about how it's worked for you. Okay, I'm going to do that. Jane, I'm going to go away and do that right now. Jane, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It has been so incredible chatting with you. I've really enjoyed this. I think the listeners are going to get so much out of this. It's, sometimes when, that you're doing everything that you can and you maybe feel like you're not really getting anywhere or going in that direction. Sometimes this is exactly what you need, that something a little bit different, or maybe something you haven't tried before, but certainly everyone, whether you are big on the woo-woo or not, there's nothing woo-woo about just trying to think about where you want to go and taking that step in the right direction.
Being very clear about what you want. And I cannot tell you how many best-selling authors I've spoken to kind of just one-on-one privately who use these techniques.
Yeah, I bet. More than we would ever imagine, I assume. Jane,
thank you. I love talking about this. So thank you for having me on and allowing me to.
Not a problem at all. Our pleasure. Thanks, Jane. Thank you for listening to the Book Deal podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the pod so you can receive updates as soon as our new eps drop. And to keep up to date with what the pod is doing, you can also find us on Instagram.